Hey, what's up, everybody? We're back on a Friday night, this time at 9 o'clock. We've got Ezra Bridger and Thrawn. We've got the Night Sisters versus the Sith. We've got the Sith fleet versus the Death Star as to which one's the better weapon. But first, we're going to talk about the future of Star Wars, and it all happens right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So how's it been going this week, man? I mean, I know, we always have to start out the show like this. I mean, whatever, just kind of like a little update, what's been going on.
Yeah, it's been really, really hectic, I think, for both of us, honestly, this week. I mean, I know you had a lot of jobs and you've had going on, and then I'm preparing to go back to the classroom, so I've been, on my computer, nonstop for, hours, for 8 hours, or sometimes even 10 hours a day.
So wait, did school start for you guys this week? Because I know it started for some people.
No, so it's been crazy, and that's what I mean. Technically, we're supposed to start on the 31st, but the Board of Education actually extended our official start time to September 8th because teachers needed more time to prepare. We're on a new platform that's been crashing it left and right. So there's a lot of different bugs that we're trying to, deal with. So
kind of an uncertain future, isn't it?
Yeah, man, it's been crazy. It's almost kind of like Star Wars.
I was going to say, speaking of uncertain futures, let's talk about the future of Star Wars right now, guys. All right, so here we are in our main topic. That's right. If you clicked on the topic because you were interested in what you saw, this is what we're talking about right now. So what do we got?
So we're talking about the future of Star Wars right now. I mean, of course, within the last recent weeks, we've been talking about a lot of different things that's going on over at Lucasfilm as far as Kathleen Kennedy possibly leaving Star Wars to go work with Bad Robot, what movies are coming out, different things that are in the queue for... we don't have titles for movies. We don't even know when the movies are actually really truly coming out. We're trying to figure out what's going on with Kenobi and Cassian Andor. So there's a lot of different properties that are, under the Star Wars umbrella that are really, kind of just looming out there. We really don't. We're getting some news on some and then no news on others, primarily the movies. So, so one of the things that, we really wanted to talk about tonight is just the future of Star Wars. Like, where is it really going? Especially with Kathleen Kennedy still being at the helm. What are her plans? What is she thinking? How is she kind of ingesting all this information? So that's where we are at this point.
All right. Well, Ronaldo's here.
Yeah.
And, yep, he says hi, guys. And our chat is working this week. Apparently. We'll see for how long. But yeah, what's interesting about this is that it seems too like Kathleen Kennedy has finally discovered the books. I was reading an article not too long ago about how she's talking about, there's 25,000 years or whatever of Star Wars stories and lore and stuff when you factor in the books and the comics and all this stuff. And it's funny because not too long ago, she made that whole big statement in that one article where she was talking about, well, it's not like there's source material for this stuff. And, as fans, we're sitting there going, what are you talking about? There's plenty of source material, especially if you count the expanded universe. And I think most of us do. I mean, most of the hardcore fans realize now that, it's not necessarily considered canon anymore. But, I mean, there's still a lot of great stories that you can take from that and put them into, the new movies. Aside from that, you now have a whole plethora of new books and new comics and stuff that is canon that you can draw from. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things that we've always often talked about is there's the things we know before the events of Phantom Menace. That's the biggest gap of them all is really what happened prior to the events of Phantom Menace. And so when you stop and really think about that, you have the Old Republic, you have the High Republic, which the books are still supposed to come out in the beginning of 2021. You have so many different stories that you can tell within that realm that have nothing to do with the Skywalkers, or Han or any familiar characters that you could really just play with. You can create new
Oh,
bounty hunters. You can create new, Jedi, new dark. I can't want to call them Sith Lords, but you can call them like Dark Jedi or, other baddies, if you will. There's tons of aliens, robots. I mean, droids. Everything. It's like everything is fresh. And that's no much like the sequel trilogy. Everything was fresh except for at least you have more of a premise with the former instead of the latter. So
yeah.
yeah, I think she's really starting to understand that they're like, okay, this is probably where we need to go.
Well, the thing that was killing me about this whole thing, and this is what really bothered me about this article. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that she's finally jumping on board with this, but it's like, she sits there and goes, yeah, there's all this lore and stuff like that, and we really have to sit back and take a look at, where we need to go with this. We need to take all this stuff into consideration. We need to honor George's legacy, all this great stuff. And I'm like, yeah, why didn't you do this in 2012?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, where was all this in 20? That's the attitude you should have had going into The Force Awakens. Not,
absolutely.
Oh, crap, we screwed up the sequel trilogy. Now what do we do? And now they're scrambling and basically trying to do damage control.
Yeah. I think that's the way they're trying to reinstill faith in the property, which is, like you said, like, in some cases for some people or some fans, too little too late.
Yeah.
But in others, people still have, much like Leia, hope. So, there's that whole divide. And I think, like I said, it can be salvaged. I think that, okay, you dropped the ball with the sequel trilogy. You can still pick it up. All right, you fumbled on the goal line. Okay, cool. You still got another play in you. Now, what you do with that, though, you have to be smart and very strategic about this. And I think that's where they really need to listen to the fans. I think Star Wars and Lucasfilm really need to listen to the fans as far as, okay, look, this is what we're looking for. These are the type of stories that we want. You can and give that to us. Find directors who actually can bring those stories to life, and then actually just come up with like you said, we always say, a plan. Like, okay, at least if we're going to do a sequel trilogy, or not sequel trilogy, but another set of trilogies, pretty much. Okay, what's the plan? Let's map this out from beginning to end. George Lucas, and like we've always said, George had this whole story in his head from day one. That's the catch. He's the guy who has this all swirling around in his head. He wrote the stories, the books, all that stuff. So if you're going to do that, you need to take source material, either go straight to George and figure out what exactly that it is that he wanted for these particular type of characters, or you get someone brand new to write these stories. If the fans love the stories, if they're congruent, then just have that person direct or oversee that particular trilogy. And if you do that, I think we'll be all right.
Yeah, and I mean, if you take Dave Filoni, for instance, he'd be the perfect guy to continue this. Because if you think about it, everything that's been successful, let's just take from the time that Disney took over. Mm-hmm. So the successful things have been Season 7 of The Clone Wars and The Mandalorian.
Yep.
That, categorically, I mean. Because you can look at The Force Awakens as successful. You can look at a few of these other things. And look, let's be honest. The Last Jedi, The Force Awakens, The Force Awakens made like $2 billion. Last Jedi made way over $1 billion, and same thing with Rise of Skywalker. So it's not exactly like they were failures or anything, but I mean, unilateral critics loving it, fans loving it. You really only have The Mandalorian in Season 7 of The Clone Wars.
But I even think with the Last Jedi, I think that made as much. I think it made the amount of money that it made simply because, one, it's the middle movie, so you gotta kind of like, you have to see it. It's almost kind of like you have to. If you're a fan, if you've been watching it, you have to see it. So I think they kind of just got by on it. Just because it made $2 billion, that doesn't mean the fans loved it. It was just like, okay, well, we have to see this in order to understand the entire story.
Well, and then when you look at The Rise of Skywalker, you had almost the same thing, right? Everybody had to see how this thing was going to end, and
Yeah.
or they needed to see. It's almost like you can't look away from a car accident kind of a thing. It's like a train wreck. They want to see how bad were these guys going to mess this up. And, to some people, they got their answer. To others, and it's funny because a lot of people actually really did enjoy The Rise of Skywalker. And that one's different than The Last Jedi in the sense of you had some people who, like, really loved that movie and thought, like, yes, JJ came in, he saved the sequel trilogy, he gave us a really good, fun Star Wars movie that we loved. And then, of course, you have the people on the other side of that that are like, oh, yeah, see, he's retconning Last Jedi because everybody knows that sucks, and, this is terrible, and they're bringing back Palpatine. Really, it's a polarizing movie, just like The Last Jedi was, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I just think that they really have to just honestly just pick a direction and then go with it. But I think you have to trust your people. I think you have to really put this thing in Filoni's hand. And then, quite frankly, I'm also wondering who's Filoni, mentoring after this.
That's a good question.
Because, like, when he's done, or he can no longer do this, who's picking up the ball for Star Wars? I mean, like I said, Disney spent all this money on this property. So if we're going to invest all this money, they're expecting, a wealth of things. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future with Filoni. Heaven forbid, nothing tragic or, befalls him, but anything can happen. So if that's the case, who takes over?
Yeah.
And that's part of the planning that they really have to start to look at. They need to start having people sit up under George and really understand and get the concept, like we saw in the Galley series, who can really sit there and have that same passion, have that same insight, and really truly get the minutia and the nuances of Star Wars in order to make a good film or series.
Yeah, no, and I mean, without question. And that's another really good topic of discussion, actually, too, is that what is not just their end game as far as story arcs and, characters and things like that, but what's their end game as far as studio heads, people that are actually going to take it to the next level. I think that that's a really big issue that they need to address, and that's all part of the future of Star Wars as well.
Yeah. Because like I said, we all care about it. And I feel like, much like Apple, Star Wars is going to suffer the same fate. The more further you get away from George Lucas, the crappier things are going to get.
Yeah, that's actually a really good analogy, too, because, don't get me wrong, I still love Apple products.
Me too.
I just don't love them like I loved them when Steve Jobs was in charge. It's like there's a lot of things that you could see that are a problem. There's boneheaded decisions that they're making that you're like, guys, you have this really, really awesome product, and you keep finding ways to mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a problem. But when you look further into the future, though, and again, this is one of those things that I'm really happy to see. I'm happy to see that Kennedy's finally saying, you know what, maybe we ought to really take another look at this. Maybe we ought to readdress a few things. Maybe we ought to look and see what went right, what went wrong. It really sounds to me like they're doing a lot of brainstorming and they're doing a lot of soul searching where this franchise is concerned.
Yeah, I like it. And the best way to, like I said, to remedy all of this is to bring in, and especially while you have him here. While you have George Lucas here, use him. I just don't understand why, unless there's some contractual thing or something or legal thing that's going on with it. And it can't be, because every time there's a movie, you got the directors, we met with George, or we sat down with George. So it's like, you can do it. So what's the problem? My thing is, if you look at the success of another show or a series that we love, which thankfully now is on Netflix, Cobra Kai. Okay.
Cobra Kai never dies.
That's right. Sweet
it's so funny. Just I don't want to get off on that too much, but it's funny that all these people now, because, it came out today on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I, of course, were watching it on YouTube. Well, it's YouTube Premium now, but when it started, it was YouTube Red.
Yep.
And it's just so funny to me now, seeing all these people come out going, oh, yeah, I'm watching this, all that. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I saw that in like 2018 or
Yeah,
something.
welcome
you
to the
know?
party.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, yeah, now you guys are up to speed a little bit, you know? So, I mean, it's a good and it's a bad thing because on one hand, it's kind of like they're talking about it like it's this great new thing. And, you know, all of us original fans of this thing have been kind of like, yeah, that's kind of like what we were trying to tell you guys. But, you know,
Yeah.
to them, I mean, they finally have the opportunity to see this with a service that they already have. So naturally, they're like, dude, this is incredible. And it's going to find new fans.
Yeah, well, see, and to my point with the whole Cobra Kai thing is though, like, you actually brought the actors in who were a part of the original thing, and they're actually producing it. That they understand their characters so well, and they're actually moving it forward. Like they're showing like natural progression of
But here's the
evolution of the characters.
Right,
And
but
I think they could do that for Star Wars.
Well, they could, but here's the other side of that, though. You got to remember that the actual creators of the show were just fans. They're actually the guys that made the Harold and Kumar movies.
Yeah, but I'm saying like when they got like when they got the actors that play Johnny Lawrence and
Yeah,
and Daniel LaRusso, it's like, okay, you get these guys and they actually understand the depth and the growth because they played these characters.
Well, but the point is they listen to them. That's
my point. Is like they're listening to them, and that's why you have such a great show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you did that with Star Wars, like with George Lucas, like, okay, you get these guys, or like when Mark Hamill was trying to tell them, like, I don't think Luke Skywalker would do that. I understand why he says that now. Like now in hindsight, I totally understand why like Mark Hamill was like, excuse me. Mark Hamill, the guy who's played this legendary character for like eons. Listen, this is not who this character is. And I think when you have to take that into consideration.
Well, you know why you really have to take that into consideration? It's not just because these guys were playing it, but if you remember, George is, and we all know that George is a terrible director as far as working with actors. So what you would have is, and Mark Hamill's told the story numerous times, he would go up to George and he would say, what should I do? Almost that old cliche, what's my motivation for this scene?
Mm-hmm.
But he would want to know more about the character and stuff. And George would just be like, whatever, just go out there. So essentially what the Star Wars actors had to do, the original trilogy guys, and even the prequel trilogy people, what they ended up having to do was, in essence, create these characters. I mean, obviously they're saying what's written on the page or whatever, but they had to fill in a lot of the blanks just because George wasn't either willing or able or whatever to do it.
Right.
So you're right. They really should be listening to a Mark Hamill or, a Harrison Ford or any of these other people about the characters because they had a lot more invested in it. They actually had to do a lot more. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of those things that I think that's a terrible, terrible tragedy when you have something like, here's the guy, kind of like you said, he's iconic. He is Luke Skywalker. And you don't listen to him? You know what I mean? It's like, why would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. And especially when you're heavily, like, the Last Jedi was heavily focused on Luke.
Yes, without question.
I mean, how do you not go to the guy? You know what I'm saying? Like that,
right.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, I could see if I'm just popping up here and there, and it's like, okay, he's going to do this. Like, okay, I don't think he would do that, but okay, he's only going to be on the screen for like 6 minutes or something like that, and he's out of here. But no, like he's the focal point of this whole movie.
Absolutely.
And it's like, how do you not really trust him, especially after all the other stuff that he's done that's super successful?
Well, let's go to the chat for a second. For a second. We have Ronaldo again, of course. He says, I think there's hope. The one thing that worries me is that if the reception for the next is really bad, they will be like, man, we need to change everything. We plan to please everybody. And that's a fair point, actually, because it's almost like you don't want to get to the point to where they would second guess themselves.
Yes.
That's the biggest problem. It's sort of like, okay, if they go back and they try to do something and then that doesn't end up working out, well, now it's almost like they're trying to hold on to the fan base. And I think that this is the thing that they have to understand. And Ronaldo, this goes out to your point here. See, George never really cared about any of that stuff. And that's the thing that I think everybody has to remember going forward. Those people I'm talking about who are working at Lucasfilm, working at Disney, whoever the decision makers are, first of all, you have to tell a good story, but you have to tell the story you want to tell. And you have to understand that there's going to be people that jump on board with it, and then there's people that aren't. So case in point, everybody loved the original trilogy. Mm-hmm. Everybody kind of didn't love the prequel trilogy. And even though The Phantom Menace had all this hype and everybody was all about it, and then they released it, and there was a huge backlash even then. I mean, everybody looks at the prequel trilogy as a whole, but if you go back and look at just The Phantom Menace, there were people that were all like, George Lucas killed my childhood even after that movie. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, he never wavered. In fact, in my opinion, he made an even worse movie as a follow-up. It's like, oh, yeah, you thought that was bad? Check this out. Yeah. Right. Now, again, nobody, don't get me wrong here. I mean, I love the prequels. But I also understand that they're not the original trilogy. They just aren't. But I won't go as far as to say that I hate them, because I don't. Now, I think we can all agree that Revenge of the Sith was really good. Like, that was actually a good movie. And if you look at most of the people who are what you would call the prequel haters, they generally give a free pass to Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, and I think because it was actually directed by someone else.
No, Lucas directed.
Oh no, when Lucas, well, he directed Revenge of the Sith.
But you're right though, in the sense of that Spielberg went in and punched up the script a little bit and even directed a scene.
Yeah, I think the and like I said, the biggest problem with the prequels, honestly, really, it isn't the story. The acting was a bit wooden, but that's only because George just doesn't. Yeah, that's not George's strong suit. He's a great storyteller, so the story was on point. I commend him for his advancement in technology. However,
but
however, I feel like the problem with that is, and that's the problem with being progressive. You have to be progressive the right way. And I've always said that is that, people sometimes want to push the envelope just because you can. But if it doesn't truly fit or serve the story, then it's useless. And I feel like that's what happened with the prequels, was that we got the Phantom Menace and Naboo looks like, the Teletubby land. And it's just
completely. It's exactly what I said when it first came out. I'm like, is Tinky Winky going to come out? Is that little son baby or whatever, that creepy baby? That was like the creepiest show ever. And of course I loved it. I mean, if you remember, I used to play it.
Yeah.
I recorded I recorded tons of tapes of it. Remember tapes?
Oh, yes.
So I recorded tons of tapes and I would keep it on. But that's because it was so bizarre. That was the whole reason why I watched it.
But the thing is, though, that's what Star Wars, the prequels at least, were, is that it just looks so animated as opposed to the lived-in universe, the lived-in world like we saw in Rogue One, like we see. And that's what made Rogue One so awesome, because they returned to that. And then, of course, subsequently, and that was a subsequently thing, that's what you have when you got, and they realized that part worked. That's why they kept that in Force Awakens and now the rest of the sequel movies. So that part they got right as far as making the universe lived in, and now it looks more authentic and real. I absolutely love that part. The story now lacked, though, because you didn't have George Lucas writing the story. So now that part, and then some of the acting, hit and miss depending on what characters you're talking about.
Well, and the other thing, and you bring up a good point, is that, I mean, if you look at the animated TV series like The Clone Wars or Rebels, and then you look at, say, Phantom Menace, not a whole lot of difference. In fact, you are absolutely correct in the sense of, I mean, I totally agree. The prequel trilogy was definitely cartoonish. Mm-hmm. It looked very animated, like you said. Mm-hmm. Whereas the original trilogy, looked very lived in. It was very real, and that was one of the things that separated it from what other sci-fi movies were always trying to do. I mean, it wasn't this whole pristine, clean type of a thing. Now, you did have that in the prequels, but that was by design, because the idea was Lucas was trying to say, look, this is back when, the Republic was in its prime, and, well, kind of. And, everything was really nice and clean and neat and everything. It wasn't, everything was beaten up and lived in and dirty because of the Empire. The Empire took over. There was more poverty. The Empire had all the money, that kind of thing.
And you could do that, and that's fine. Like, I'm okay with, like, it looking clean, because, like, if you look at the Star Trek movies, like, the Star Trek movies has that very sleek, polished look, but it still looks realistic. It looks like a place that you could actually go to.
Yeah, that's true.
As opposed to, like, I look like I was flipping the comic book page or something like that. And that was the difference for me. But, I mean, when you start, and going to the acting point, this is going to sound bad. I mean, it is, in my opinion, and I don't know if you agree. I think the acting in the Clone Wars series was better than the prequel acting.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, as long as I'm not the only one who thinks that.
No.
Like, I've never mentioned that before, but yeah, I really feel like the actual voice acting from the actual animated cartoon was better than the actual prequel acting with live people.
Well, but here's what's sad, and this is why I think a lot of people, at least the fans don't blame the actors, and that's a good thing, because if you think about it, I mean, Natalie Portman and Ewan McGregor, I mean, they're Oscar nominated. They may have even won an Oscar at some point. But the point is, these people are pretty much top-notch actors. I mean, you have Liam Neeson in there. You have all these people who are very well-regarded, and it's kind of like the Detroit Lions in the sense of they go and they do other movies, and they're brilliant. And then they go and do a Star Wars movie, and it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, and I really do feel for them, because Star Wars, to say that you're in a Star Wars movie is such an honor. But then to have your movie kind of like trashed is kind of like, dang, that sucks.
Yep. Just ask Jake Lloyd and
yep.
Ahmed Best.
Ahmed Best. But you're at the mercy of whoever's directing. You have to give or convey whatever what the director tells you. So,
well, that's what I was gonna say, is the fact that I think that one of the things that the prequel trilogy really highlights is the importance of directors. Or I should say the importance of a good director, because, and this is it. I mean, a lot of times people think like, these actors, you look at like all these Oscar-winning actors in these movies, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, so-and-so gave this brilliant performance, whatever, but they don't really understand the role of a director and all that. They think that the director is guiding the whole movie and whatever, and they
that's
are
part of it, right?
That's part of it, but their main function is to bring out the performance that is needed for that film from the actors, because they also work with the DP, but the DP is the one that controls the look of the film, and then you have your camera ops and all that. But I mean, it's one of those things that the director's primary responsibility is to bring that performance out from the actors that is required for that particular film. And that's why you'll see that some actors like working with some directors better than others. Definitely. And it's because of what they bring out. It's no different than in music and producers. A good producer will actually bring a performance out of a musician that even the musician wouldn't have done, or a trainer. I mean, how many times have you and I been in the gym and we've actually said, back when we had, the trainers and stuff, like, man, I mean, I would have quit, 10 reps ago. And this insane man is like making me do all this other stuff. I'm going to end up in the hospital at the end. Well, you're not ending up in the hospital. The job of the trainer is they know how far to push you. And they know how to get that performance out of you.
The results that they want.
And the results, exactly. And where you would quit because you're like, oh, this isn't comfortable, or, oh, I think I'm going to die, they actually have the knowledge to say, no, you're not going to die. Now, if you do 6 more reps, you might die, but if you do 3 more, that's the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a director does for an actor. They actually say, no, you know what? You might be happy with that, but I'm not. Let's do it again. Or conversely, they might say, you know what? I know you want to keep doing another take, but we got it. And they're like, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure we got it. Because they're looking at the project as a whole, whereas the actor is just looking at their one performance, their role in the film.
True. Very good. Yeah, I could completely agree with you on that one.
Well, that's because it's not Duel of the Fates yet. See, it's okay. It's okay to agree with me on the main topic. That's totally cool. It's only boring if we do that during Duel of the Fates.
Yeah, very true.
But I mean, what do you guys think? What are you guys thinking about the future of Star Wars? I mean, it's really interesting right now. Like I said, we could probably do, an entire series on this subject.
Definitely.
And in fact, we might even do like a Future of Star Wars Part 2 or a Future of Star Wars Part 3 because there really is a lot that you can discuss.
And things will be changing constantly. So, this will probably be the topic a lot of different times because, much like Yoda said, the future is always in motion.
Right. But I mean, I think as far as where it's generally going, I think we hit a lot of the things. I mean, naturally, I don't want to beat a dead tauntaun here, but I mean, I think that we just need to say that Kathleen Kennedy seems to be in the right direction. Now, here's the thing, though. Is she going to be around to see any of that through? Because, as you know, when does her contract end? Like 2021, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, because the celebration's going to be in 2022, and a lot of people thought that maybe that's why she was doing that.
Mm.
But, look, you guys, I mean, hey, there's still time, obviously, to chat with us live while we're here. If you guys want, don't forget, you can leave a comment in the comment section and let us know what you guys are thinking about the future of Star Wars. Is it heading in a good direction? Is it heading in a bad direction? Where do you guys think it's going? What do you guys think they should be doing? Where would you like to see them put their concentration? Let us know in the comment section, or you could still chat live. And while we're talking about it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you guys could see all the cool content that I promise one day we're actually going to do. And hit that like button. I see somebody already has. Why don't you join them? Let's put some more likes up there. All right, what do we got next?
Next, we have Duel of the Fates.
All right. So here we are with Duel of the Fates. What do we have?
All right. So this week, we're putting up, what do you think is the more deadlier weapon, or the better weapon, I should say? The Death Star or the Sith fleet?
That's a very interesting question. But before we answer that,
yes,
Jason has actually said something. So, he's like, I don't know yet. I'm optimistic, but that's just because I want it to be good. I'm very excited for Mando 2 and all the other TV shows. Yeah, I would say TV is probably pretty much where they're at right now. I mean, that seems to be where they're making all the good decisions because...
That's where Filoni is.
Well, yeah, that's where Filoni is. And if you actually look at what we were talking about before... That seems to be where everybody has accepted the content. You had Clone Wars Season 7, you have Mandalorian. Now, you can throw Rogue One in there because most people generally like that. And honestly, most people like Solo as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it didn't do so well at the box office, but, well, I mean, we did a whole episode on that. You guys could just go back and find that. We talk about all the reasons why Solo didn't do as well as it should. So be on the lookout for that. But now we're going to turn it over to the Sith Fleet versus the Death Star.
Yep.
What are you going to go with? I'm going to do it. I'm going to have you do it first.
Oh, okay. I'm going Death Star.
Ooh. All right, I'm going Sith Fleet.
Okay.
So why are you going Death Star?
Well,
you got some splaining to do here.
Got some splaining to do.
Splaining.
Well, I feel like here's the bottom line. I think although the Sith fleet has just as much firepower as a Death Star, and you can control a lot of different. You can control more ground with the Sith fleet. The thing that makes the Death Star unique and special to me is the fact of its weakness. You have to judge the strength of something by its own weakness. So to destroy a Star Destroyer is probably not that complicated if you target it the right way.
As we saw in The Rise of Skywalker, all you
Exactly.
got to do is shoot the stupid lasers. That was so stupid.
Whereas the Death Star, I mean, you got this little tiny one exhaust port. Like, it's only on one side. It's not even like a multiple port. It's like one exhaust port.
I got a question about that for you. You remember when you submitted a question into the Clear Your Mind thing, just like out of nowhere?
Yeah.
Yeah. I could do the same thing because this relates to this. So what do you
Okay.
think about this? Now, we know the Death Star 2, the one that was in Return of the Jedi, they didn't complete it.
Right.
So that's why they were able to fly in and blow up the reactor.
Mm-hmm.
My question, though, is that stupid little 2mm exhaust port, we know now, thanks to canon, in Rogue One specifically, that Galen Erso was the one that built that in. He actually built that in order to, without anybody knowing, so that way he could tell everybody and say, hey, go blow this thing up.
Right.
Do you think they fixed it?
I don't know. See, here's the thing, though. I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Um.
You think they're just like...
Well, no. Wait. Well, It's kind of hard to answer that question.
Well,
for two
it's
reasons.
impossible to answer that question, actually.
Well, I
but
mean,
it's...
true, but I mean, it's like, well, here's where I'm going with it. I say, I'm using one of your moments, like, for clarification.
Oh, man.
But here's my thing.
Hey, now I know how annoying that is.
So here's my thing. With the Death Star, if you remember, okay, like I said, and okay.
Yeah. That's right. We got a music soundtrack here on Head to Head. I don't even have to play it. All right. Well, while Daryl's doing that, let me go to the chat here. We got Ronaldo. So Ronaldo's saying, I would say the Sith fleet, but the Death Star doesn't have a giant weapon below that you can fire and easily destroy the whole thing. And that's exactly right, Ronaldo. That's exactly what I was saying, is the fact that, I can see that, and I know that that's a big issue. But my problem is that that's a weakness in writing. I don't honestly think that that's the case. Jason, it's not the exhaust port. It's the main reactor. Yeah, well, in the Death Star 2, it was the main reactor. And it's, but you got to remember, the exhaust port is how they got to the main reactor when the thing was built.
Right.
See, the way that they were able to destroy the second one, it's because it was open. So once the shield generator was down, they were able to fly right into the thing. Now, I mean, granted, they did still have to fly through quite a bit of small spaces. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't simple. But when a Death Star is actually complete, at least the first one, you had to send the photon torpedoes down through the exhaust port, which is how they blew up the main reactor. So that's actually what I was talking about. I was talking about the difference between blowing up a completed, fully built Death Star versus blowing up the one in Return of the Jedi, because it was not fully built yet. And so they're both the main reactor. But the thing is, that exhaust port was done purposely by Galen. That wasn't really part of the original plan. That was something that he was able to do to make it possible to blow it up. Mm-hmm. So the question becomes, do you think that, they changed the plan?
I think, well, the reason why I say, if initially I thought, no, they didn't know, because, like I said, Galen kind of hit that in the design. I mean, you got this huge moon-sized space station. Are you really going to analyze every sort of little? I mean, granted, I get it. Like, you probably wouldn't, not if the first one blew up, but they probably thought but they probably thought it was a fluke or something. But the thing is, though, if you do remember, there was a moment where in A New Hope, that one commander walks over to Tarkin. He said, "We've analyzed their attacks and we have detected a weakness." And then he's like, should we abort? He was like, abort in our moment of triumph? I think you overestimate their chances.
Star Wars theater, ladies and gentlemen. Star Wars theater.
Thank you. Quite the thespian. But so I think in that regard, yeah, they probably did, realize what it was, because they analyzed, okay, like, you sending a bunch of little small ships. Why aren't you sending any huge ships like a destroyer or something after this thing? Like, why are you sending these little basically Hot Wheels after this, Death Star? So that was, of course, their first thought. Like, okay, that would concern me too. Like, from a military standpoint, like, surely they don't think an X-wing could blow this thing up. So they must know something. So then let's figure out where. And then, of course, they're probably analyzing the trench they keep going down. They keep going down that one trench. Why? What's over there that they keep going in this particular direction? And then that's why they probably realized, like, well, I guess if you hit, this area, you could set off a chain reaction. It's possible. It's probably unlikely, though.
Oh, I'm still thinking about that whole Family Guy episode.
Oh, that's still the greatest, man.
Could we just put some plywood over it or something like that? I mean, so funny the way that whole scene played out.
Well, the fact that Stewie just said, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say this. But
it's like, wait a second. I wouldn't be doing my job. But yeah, man, that was terrific. Okay, so.
In the chats, Jason says, I think exhaust ports would make sense to come out of a main reactor. The exhaust port was probably added by a random engineer rather than Galen. Then Ronaldo says, it seems like they know, but they thought the ships had but they thought the ships.
You'll get there.
They had protecting the Death Star, and the shield would be enough to protect it. Okay, a little bit of a tongue twister, but I got it.
Yeah, the Death Star too. So yeah, both those are things, but Galen was the one that actually put the thing in there.
And there's one thing, there's actually a video. It's actually quite hilarious. I don't remember who did it, but it was that guy when he was actually trying to explain the whole exhaust port.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, why is there even an exhaust port? Because exhaust means you have to get rid of stuff. Yet how is a photon torpedo supposed to go down if it's pushing things out because it's an exhaust port?
That video was
I was like, that was brilliant. I didn't think about it.
It was, but that, once again, now you're at a higher level of fandom than me. Because even though I could put a video like that together, I wouldn't put a video like that together.
Right.
Because I wouldn't have actually thought of all that. Kudos to him, though. I mean, that was incredible. But now let me show a little bit of love for the Sith fleet here.
Okay.
Because, yes, you do have the issue of it apparently is very simple to destroy the cannons on these Death Stars, or Star Destroyers. Mm-hmm. Or Death Star destroyers, perhaps. But the problem that I have is that was just lazy writing to me. Mm-hmm. I actually think, though, if you look at the concept, so let's look at the concept, because the execution maybe wasn't so great, but the concept was fantastic. Yeah. The concept was take the firepower of a Death Star, put it on a Star Destroyer, and now you could put these things everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not just one big, giant, moon-sized sphere.
Station. Yeah.
That's flying through space and can only do... Because if you really look at the evolution of this, the Death Star.
1 and 2.
1 and 2. Incredible weapons. Then you had Starkiller Base. Everybody forgets about Starkiller Base. Now, Starkiller Base had a disadvantage of the fact that it was only in one spot.
All right.
However, Starkiller Base had the advantage of the fact that it could take out 5 or 10 planets at once.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. Ronaldo's got something to say.
Yeah, his question is, by the way, can the laser beams of the Sith fleet penetrate the Death Star shields?
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that the Death Star could... that's really tough to say, because I'm not sure the Death Star could repel an attack from another Death Star, because they wouldn't figure it had to. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was going to bring up earlier, we got caught up in something else, but one of the things that I wanted to originally bring up was the fact that they sort of retconned the whole Death Star thing, and to me this is a brilliant move, by the way. They said that now the reason why the laser is so powerful is because it's firing through kyber crystals.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually have kyber crystals powering this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's enhancing the beam. That's why you get those like 3 beams shooting and they form to one. They're supposed to be hitting a kyber crystal or something. So if you actually have another cannon doing this, could it repel it? That's tough to say, because my other question, which I would return to you guys, if anybody knows, please enlighten us, either right here in the chat like you guys are doing, or even in the comment section if you're watching the rebroadcast. The lasers are going to actually have to be smaller on the Star Destroyers.
Yeah.
Because if you really look at that laser on the Death Star, I mean, the thing was huge.
Yeah, the thing is like a dish. I mean,
yeah, it's like a big radar dish. I mean,
when you see that thing like being installed in Rogue One.
Oh, yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
And that was another thing I loved about that movie, too. Is like you really got a chance to see the scope of the Death Star.
Well, if you think about it.
As far as from a different.
Yeah, it's the Death Star's origin story.
Yeah. So when you really see how like massive that, now you see why Luke was just like freaking out, because like look at the size of that thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, anybody you would. I mean, and that's a problem a lot of times with science fiction and fantasy fans is, we'll see all this fantastic stuff on the screen. It's like, oh, another dragon, or oh, another this, or oh, another that. I mean, if you really stop and put yourself in the mindset, like, what if you were really seeing this?
Yeah, it's just kind of like Independence Day, like when you saw like those spaceships like enter the orbit, and how it just like blanketed a whole city. It's just kind of like, that's freaky. Like
now,
imagine
you remember,
walking outside and seeing that.
Oh, I know. Every time.
Out.
I still think that's one of the things that movie did the best, is it really gave you a realistic view of probably what it would look like and how you would react if there was an alien invasion.
Mm-hmm.
It gave you that scope, that dread. And I mean, if you think about it, this goes along the lines of what you're saying with Independence Day. Remember the scene in Rogue One where the stupid Death Star formed an eclipse on that planet?
Oh, man.
Can you imagine seeing that?
That would freak me out.
Or when it came, sort of like a little into the kind of like the atmosphere. I mean, not really, but sort of. I think it was when Krennic saw it.
Krennic, he knew what time it was.
He knew it was. Yeah, he knew it was coming. He was like, okay, well, hey, it was fun.
It was a good ride.
It was a good ride. At least I could say that I had something to do with building this thing that's about to kill me.
Yep.
But again, I think that even though you could make the argument that even though the Sith fleet had Death Star cannons on it, and maybe they were powerful enough to blow up a planet, or at least do the same amount of damage that that one Death Star did on Jeddah, you're still talking about a devastating weapon here. I mean, can you imagine? And one of the things that really kills me is when in A New Hope, they were talking about how when Alderaan was blown up, and it was like Han Solo says something like, it would take more firepower than, I forgot. I think he said a bunch of Star Destroyers or something.
Yeah, like 100 Star Destroyers.
Yeah. The whole time I'm thinking, well, not 100 of these Star Destroyers. You didn't live long enough, unfortunately, to see that. But,
right.
And that's one of those things that I think you have to look at it from a strategic point of view, not just a firepower point of view.
Just as a brief, I guess kind of a companion to this conversation. Like, do you remember, like, okay, so Rise of Skywalker, the Resistance is trying to, knock out the whole locating whatever that dish was on that one Star Destroyer or whatnot. The navigational one, I guess, so they couldn't go into orbit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the Palpatine was shooting all this Force lightning in the air, remember? And it was frying out all the other ships. Why didn't it affect them?
Yeah, I know.
The only way I could see it, unless they had shields up or something, maybe.
Well, and it almost seemed like they were doing something along the lines of Palpatine was targeting it. Like, he wasn't, even though you saw this lightning going up and you saw it like hitting all these ships, if you look, it wasn't really hitting the Star Destroyers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I guess if Palpatine is that powerful at this point, he probably could control the lightning to that degree. again, it's a little bit of a stretch. There's a lot of things that in that series or in that particular movie that's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, that's really the only problem that I had was that you basically had this trifecta of first you had all these incredible coincidences. I mean, it did not take them long to find anything or to do anything. It's like they stumbled on everything in that movie.
And Jason says that scene was comedic.
Yeah, and
I agree.
There's a lot of things in there that was comedic, unfortunately. And again, I'm somebody who happened to really enjoy The Rise of Skywalker. I thought it was great. I loved it. I loved watching it. It was a fun movie. But you can't think about it too hard. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to basically just enjoy it. And I think that's one of the reasons why the movie was so fast-paced. It's like by the time you have time to think, like, yeah, I don't know if that's, boom, they're on to something else. And that's something that I think that they did by design, by the way. I don't think that was accidental by any stretch of the imagination. But again, I think that strategically, if you have all these Star Destroyers, and think about it, they could constantly build. I mean, how long does it take to build one Death Star? You know, they're building the first one for like 30 years or something, it seemed like.
Well, yeah, I mean, because like, you know, from Phantom Menace, I mean, that thing was already kind of like in motion, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, you also have to think in terms, too. This is one of the criticisms that a lot of people have, is like, well, wait a second. You know, it took them like 30 years to build the first one, but then, you know, 2 years later or something in Return of the Jedi, they have another one. Now, the expanded universe, the old canon, well, I can't really call it canon. They said that they were building multiple ones at the same time.
I was about to say, yeah, they were building them simultaneously because the original theory was that, like, you would have multiple Death Stars on different quadrants of the galaxy, and then that way they can control everything, which would have made sense, which lends to the whole Star Destroyer thing, because it's like Palpatine's like, okay, well, if my big control weapon is the laser, if I could put that on a Star Destroyer, if I could find a way to put that in a Star Destroyers are cheaper to make, and I can get those out faster than creating a bunch of Death Stars. So it makes sense.
And you could get more of them. You know, my only issue with it is, like, you know, do you suddenly have all these Kyber crystals?
Ronaldo says, I think JJ played the Force Unleashed before writing that Palpatine lightning scene.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, definitely. And it's funny because that's totally what it reminds me of.
Doesn't it?
Totally. And in fact, you know, even when Rey was like, and Rey and Kylo were fighting over that transport, that was such a total Force Unleashed kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is one of the things that I was really happy to see. Like, yes, now we're finally seeing some real Force powers here.
Yeah.
These guys are playing tug of war with a ship.
Yeah. And then she fries the ship from, like...
Then she fries it with lightning, and what's so funny to me, I mean, it was cracking me up that she didn't even mean to. She was just trying to really exert herself with the Force. And, you know, she could kind of see the lightning form, like, what's this?
Well, that just shows you, though, that the light side, you can do that.
Yeah, well, again, it depends. Is it a light side thing, or is she going dark there for a little bit?
Well, I think they're all, you know, we've talked about this with the Force before, though.
Sure, I mean, the offensive versus defensive, that kind of thing, you know.
And they're just like, they're all available to you, really. It's just one side particularly uses one over the other, that's all.
I will say this. One of the things that defends you, unfortunately, it's not canon anymore, but it does, I mean, let's face it, they could easily pick it, right? Mm-hmm. And that is, in the Yuuzhan Vong series, Luke did shoot Force lightning.
Well, I mean, you could say that because, like, okay, well, Force choke is considered a dark side power, but Luke used it.
That's true. Well, Luke, I don't know if he's the best example of everything, but yeah.
Well,
I mean,
at least in Return of the Jedi, I'm saying, at least.
Sure. No, I mean, you know, of course he was wearing a black cloak, and it's kind of looking questionable. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I know. No offense.
Black cloaks matter.
Hey, you should be happy, though. It's a quicker, easier path.
It is. More powerful, too.
More powerful. Exactly. More offensive. Just saying.
If only we could force
And the comments will come now.
Open the floodgates.
Force unleashed. All right, but what do you guys think? Again, if you guys have any more thoughts, you guys in the chat, feel free. Chat's a free for all. You guys could talk about, like, we say it and another chat pops up.
Jason says, I think she was going dark when she shot lightning. If you watch Ray's expression, she uses her anger a lot.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that too, because there was the expression. Well, you know what, though? It depends. You could actually look at that scene one of two ways. You could definitely look at like she had anger on her face when she did that, or you can also look at it like it was almost desperation.
Like she was trying.
Yeah,
she was
exactly. Just struggling. Like she was really trying to do it, and she was feeling, really emotional about it, and just that could have been more what it was. But she did have some Palpatine faces going. I mean, it's funny because one of the things that people used to use when they wanted to prove that she was a Palpatine, because remember, that theory existed way back in The Force Awakens, when everybody was like, who's Rey's parents? And a couple of people actually said Palpatine, which, of course, everybody thought they were crazy. But if you remember, I was one of those guys that says it works. It's plausible. Of course, I never imagined in a million years they would actually do it. But one of the things that they used as an example to show that she was related was if you looked at her lightsaber style, she had that same stabbing motion that Palpatine used, and he was the only one who's ever used it. I mean, at least in the movies or anything that we've seen. So, hey. But anyway, Sith Fleet versus Death Star, what are you guys thinking? Again, you can keep chatting it, it's fine. Or... let us know in the comment section if you're watching the rebroadcast of this thing. All right. You ready to go to the cantina?
Let's go.
All right. Let's talk some more Star Wars in the cantina. All right. Well, this is a part of our show where we just kind of talk about, we have some things that we're talking about, but, this is like a general conversation sort of segment where, things could be going on in the news about Star Wars, or there might just be some things that we like to discuss about it that we can do in this segment. So what do we got first?
All right, first we have Grand Admiral Thrawn and Ezra Bridger have reportedly are going to appear in the upcoming live-action Star Wars project.
That would be cool.
Yeah, so it says the Untitled series is in question, of course. Will reportedly feature Thrawn at the forefront. The series was rumored back at the beginning of June, with many insiders that claim that Lucasfilm is currently developing the project through the inclusion of Bridger is a new piece of the puzzle. Disney Plus has already had great success with The Mandalorian, and they have a few more officially confirmed shows in the pipeline.
Well, Jason's already talking about it, and I have to give him a lot of credit for spelling Thrawn's Chiss name correctly and even knowing it, because that's a mouthful right there. Like every time I read it in the novels, and I've gotten to the point where I can say it and stuff.
Yes, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's cool that
kudos, Jason.
This is one of those things that I love about Star Wars, is that they don't cheese out and just everybody speaking English, or as it's called in Star Wars, basic. You have to where they think about these things like, okay, we have to interact with all these other beings from all these other planets, so you have basic, which is basically English because Star Wars is an American invention. But the thing is, they actually have rich cultures within the Star Wars universe. So in the case of Thrawn, he's got a Chiss name. That's his actual name, but, nobody in the... People are like, can I buy a vowel? It's one of those things.
I'm thinking in the book they said, like, people who have such a hard time to actually pronounce his name. And I think if you try to pronounce their name, it's like incorrectly. It's almost like an insult or something.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sure it hurts their ears. It's no different than when people... it's so funny when you look at Americans going over to other countries and they're trying to speak the language, or they'll pronounce something, and it just hurts the head of the people that live there. Like, okay, you know what? Just stop. I'll speak English, okay? Let's just not do this. But I mean, the thing that's cool about it though is that when you really get into the Thrawn novels, they really get into the Chiss culture, particularly in the third one. And I'm talking about the new ones now, the ones that have been newly written and they're part of the new canon. It's basically Thrawn alliances, and Thrawn treason. Isn't that great? Mm-hmm. I actually remember these things. I didn't even remember all the titles when I was reading them. Now they're just rolling right out. But they really did approach the Chiss culture, which I think is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now Ronaldo's got a pretty good thing. He thinks that Henry Cavill would be perfect for Thrawn.
Ooh.
I had never thought about that.
I could see him playing.
I could actually see him doing that. Because I always went to like Benedict Cumberbatch or there's one other guy too that sometimes they would throw around, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that'd be great, but never thought about Henry Cavill. But you're right, he would actually be really good.
Yep, blew him up.
But I mean, well, what about you guys? Who do you think would be a good Ezra though? Who do you think would be a good Ezra, Daryl?
I think the guy who played Aladdin in the live-action Aladdin.
Man, that's exactly who I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Because what was funny, that's what we said. Didn't we used to call him Aladdin when we first started watching Rebels?
Yeah, because he was like a street rat, like the stuff that he was doing. He was acting like Aladdin. But
so I think we even busted out in some of the songs too.
Yeah, let's not do that on live.
Yeah. The goal is we're trying to gain viewers, not lose them.
Yeah, we're going to get a bunch of dislikes after that one. But, so if you guys remember, like at the end of Rebels, Thrawn and Ezra was like zapped into an unknown part of the galaxy. So that's where all this is kind of coming from. So, that's why we can say like, okay, well, they could have, lived on to survive throughout the events of the original trilogy. And then now, as adults, well, at least Ezra, he's probably like 50 years old or something like that.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, though. So for this series that they're either theorizing or sort of giving a soft announcement, are they even talking about, like what time period we're talking about here? Or
no, they didn't. I mean, they keep mentioning like Mandalorian, like he might pop up around the Mandalorian time era. So, that's why I kind of gave that.
Yeah, I mean that's possible, and and I've been hearing that the teaser trailer for the season 2 Mandalorian is going to be very Ahsoka heavy. So if it's going to feature Ahsoka and you're going to do something with Thrawn and Ezra, it does make sense to put them around the same time period.
Yeah.
Oh, so Ronaldo says Tom Holland for Ezra. That could work too.
Tom Holland?
Yeah, he's the guy that played Spider-Man. The new Spider-Man, the one that's been in the Avengers movies.
I mean, I know that. I'm thinking like...
Oh, you're just contemplating the...
I'm thinking like, I guess depending on the time period, yeah. Like if you did a younger Ezra, yeah.
Yeah,
if he's around the Mandalorian, that's why I was thinking like if he's like around the Mandalorian era, then you would have to go older.
Maybe he's like Webster or Gary Coleman or something and didn't... didn't really age much.
Wolverine.
I mean, Baby Yoda's 50.
That's good.
I know,
his age.
little bit of a different species, but still. Yeah, well, that's a good point though. Who would be a good older Ezra? Well, actually, how old would Ezra be? So how old was he? How old is he even in Rebels? Because
Rebels, he's like probably
like late teens, early 20s,
like 17, 18.
Yeah, I think he's probably early 20s, maybe mid by the time it ends. Because if you remember, he was definitely way older. He was probably like 22 or 23 when Rebels ends.
Yeah, so I could see like if you did an older version of him.
Right. Jason says it would be awesome to see Ezra and Thrawn crash on the Grisk homeworld. Oh yeah, or something, and be forced to work together to survive. That would be sweet. The Grisks were, by the way, for anybody who hasn't read the Thrawn novels, they were like kind of the Chiss's main enemy. And they were pretty powerful, too. They actually had a little bit of a Yuuzhan Vong vibe to them. In fact, I've been willing to bet that the Yuuzhan Vong is what they were for the expanded universe. I'm thinking that the Grisk are pretty much what Disney and Lucasfilm are trying to do. Like, they didn't want to use the Yuuzhan Vong name or the concept, but they wanted somebody kind of like that. But, that remains to be seen. Now, who did you say could play the older Ezra now?
I don't know. I'm still trying to think about that.
Still thinking? So you didn't say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
That's a tough one, yeah.
How about Jeff Goldblum? Just saying. You know what? That could be our question of the week, which, by the way, is something that I just invented right this second. Oh, I should mention this while I'm at it. So I did this poll on our social media a week ago, I think, where I put the question about bringing, a bunch of new characters and stuff. Would it really ruin the whole vibe of the series or something? Like if they bring a bunch of the characters in Mandalorian, would it dilute it basically? And most of the people said no. Like 80% said no, go ahead, bring them in, it's cool. So just so I put out there. Maybe I'll put this one out there for Twitter this week. So if you guys want, I'll try to do that definitely by Monday, but with either today or tomorrow or maybe even Sunday, I'll get it up there. Who would you guys think, and maybe we'll throw out a couple of names, but who would you guys think should actually play Ezra? Like an older Ezra. Like how old do you think we're talking here? It's probably about, figure 10 years. Somebody between the ages of maybe 30 and 40. That's probably what we're looking at Ezra is during the time of Return of the Jedi or 5 years after. Probably closer to 40, actually. That would be my guess. All right. What's next?
All right. Next we have the Sith versus the Night Sisters.
Yeah, now I saw you bringing this up. That was kind of interesting. What, did you just run across this or what? Or were you just watching Clone Wars one day and was just like, you know what? I got to find out what the deal is with these two. Because if you read the article that you referenced in here, it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, so the whole thing with them is that, I always thought it was interesting how the Night Sisters were able to imbue Savage with the Force. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? Like, the Force is kind of like this living thing, but they're witches. And so it's like, okay, well, it's magic, but the Force is supposed to be like a life entity type thing. So, like, how do you deal with that? So, and they're kind of like, they're on the darkish side, but they're not Sith either. So, and then, you saw the relationship that Queen Mother had with Dooku, throughout the Clone Wars. And so they kind of have like this mutual relationship with each other, but you could tell they still didn't of course, they didn't really care too much for each other either, especially when they went after Asajj.
Yeah, they weren't really going to go to each other's houses for Life Day, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, all right, we kind of have that mutual respect, and that's kind of basically what it is. So the Night Sisters of Dathomir were like a cult, and they were originally created by the writers of the old expanded universe. And the Night Sisters apparently draw upon an aspect of the Force not typically accessed by the Jedi or the Sith. As such, they possess Force powers that have never been seen elsewhere in Star Wars lore. The relationship between the Sith and the Night Sisters has always been portrayed as a troubled one. Darth Sidious coveted their power, interested in both their mysterious potions and their ability to resurrect the dead. Palpatine's plans ultimately brought him into an outright conflict with the Night Sisters, and he responded to their aggression by conducting an act of genocide. So you kind of see that in Star Wars Rebels, where the Night Sisters attempted to conquer death, but ultimately proved unsuccessful when Kanan and Ezra destroyed an artifact housing the last surviving Night Sister spirit. So Palpatine has kind of always had this thing with him because, of course, he's always been trying to figure out how to cheat death ever since he and dealing with Plagueis. And I guess there's a book, or there's a story called The Gilded Cage, and it tells of an ancient power of the Sith Lord called Darth Kaldoth. And apparently he's like a prominent he was a prominent member of the Sith Empire. And at one point he made a daring incursion into the Night Sisters graveyard on Dathomir in order to steal a mummified corpse. He knew the Night Sisters were able to resurrect these corpses, and he wanted to study how it had been preserved as part of his own attempt to conquer death. And the Night Sisters regarded this as an act of war. So that's how the whole war started between the Night Sisters and the Sith. You had a Sith Lord who kind of pretty much heard about they had these abilities. He wanted to study it more, almost in that Sith alchemy type of way. And of course, the Night Sisters kind of lived on their own world. They kind of did their own thing, and they kind of regarded that as like an act of war against their own kind. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, and I remember they had some sort of an uneasy alliance with Palpatine too, like, later on. Because, I went through and I read about all this stuff, and it's really fascinating about this. And I do remember reading about the Night Sisters back when I used to read the old Expanded Universe. In fact, when they popped up in the Clone Wars, I was like, I wonder if those are the same guys or ladies.
Ladies.
But and it turned out, of course, that they were.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really exciting to me because I always thought that the idea of, like these Force witches was kind of a cool thing. And once again, this goes into my whole, hey, maybe we should see a Star Wars horror movie at some point. Because, they're really doing this. Now, getting back, of course, to the Ezra and Thrawn thing, Jason says a cool thing for if Ezra and Thrawn teamed up is Thrawn would learn about the Force. One of Thrawn's only weaknesses is he doesn't understand the Force, so the team up would make Thrawn even better. And yeah, these are the kinds of things that we're talking about here. You have all these concepts around the Force that could actually be cool if they pursued them. For one, you had like these Force witches, and obviously they did put that in the Clone Wars. Then you have a character like Thrawn, who really doesn't really understand it. They're aware of it, by the way. They actually have, and I'm sure you must have read the Thrawn novels because you've been bringing out too many.
Well, the fact that he can spell Thrawn's actual name just.
Well, that's a big deal, and yeah, but that they put that out there in a couple of different things. But yeah, I'm guessing that that's definitely the case. So
he knows about the Greeks or the bisque or whatever they're called.
Greeks, the bisque. Oh yeah, yeah. How's it going over there, Mr. Queen's Peril?
It's going wonderful.
Do you? So are we any further? Like maybe a couple more pages or
a paragraph?
Okay, all right. So
inching along.
I gotcha. The bisque. I'm going to call him that from now. Actually, what's funny is I'm probably going to call him that by accident now that I've been joking about it a little bit. But,
right.
Yeah, one of the things that Thrawn basically has is he doesn't really understand the Force, even though... Sorry about that, guys. All right, so what were you saying about him? we were dealing with Ronaldo's comment.
Yeah. It seems like the only Mother Talcin is the only one who can fight Palpatine. And I was saying, I don't even know if she could beat Dooku, though.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Yeah.
It's really hard to gauge the power of some of these people and like all these matchups because on one hand they'll seem really powerful and then on the other hand something happens. Where it's kind of like they don't seem as powerful for some reason.
Yeah, because at least in the Clone Wars, she got bested by, like her magic couldn't even save her against Dooku and Savage when they kind of basically stormed Dathomir. So I don't know about that one because if they can't do that, like they definitely can't. She can't take out Palpatine.
Yeah, Palpatine's
way too powerful.
Well, for another thing, you got to understand that Palpatine's like on another whole level of Sith even.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the most powerful.
He's like Grandmaster, basically.
Yeah, exactly. He's way beyond. So I mean, these are the kinds of things that you have to take into consideration. And a lot of times it's really hard to do these matchups because, for one thing, you have to look at, well, when are they matching up? At what point? Because
At what point?
Right, because you do have some people that are, I don't really want to say in their prime, but I mean, kind of in their prime. I mean, there's definitely times where they're more apt to take these people on than others. So, but I don't know. I mean, let us know what you guys are thinking in the comments section about the Night Sisters and the Sith. If there's anything else that you guys want to know about it or want us to cover, let us know. Maybe we'll do a whole show on it. That'd be fun. All right, what do we got next?
All right. So next, we're going to talk about Finn. So what's Finn's future after the rise of Skywalker, and when could he next appear? All right. So I kind of came up with this. I was kind of, putting around the net looking for Star Wars stuff. And it seems that, of course, we kind of know from JJ that it was kind of revealed that what Finn was trying to tell Rey the whole time was that he was Force sensitive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could definitely agree with that. So
the thing is that now they're trying to say that maybe they're going to do something different with Finn coming up. Like they actually might do a show or a film solely kind of around him and his journey to actually getting into the Force.
Well, I don't really see how they could do that, considering that, you got John Boyega over there going, you're not going to Disney Plus me, and, he doesn't really seem to even want to come back to the role, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah, it seems like he's actually kind of jilted about it.
Yeah. You got people like Oscar Isaac that are like, yeah, maybe if I need, another house or something, I'll do another Star Wars film. Daisy Ridley seems to be okay with it, but she doesn't want to do it right away. And Boyega just seems like he's just kind of done with it. Like you said, almost like he was kind of jilted, like they did something to him. So I don't really see much of a future for Finn unless they want to recast the role or unless they do an animated series. Because then you could do what you did with the prequel actors, and you could just recast them. You could just get somebody that sounds kind of like Finn. Geez, I mean, Sam Witwer can do pretty much any character at this point. I'm sure he can muster up a little Finn.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But I hate to interrupt this lovely discussion of Star Wars. Unfortunately, I mean, this has nothing to do with Star Wars, but I do have some very, very sad news that unfortunately Chadwick Boseman just passed away from his 4-year battle with colon cancer. The guy who plays Black Panther. Yeah.
Wow. What is this, like breaking news or something?
Breaking news, like it just came across. Like that's why you see me looking off. I'm just like kind of looking kind of disheveled because I'm like, wait, what? Because it just popped up on my like.
I didn't even know he had colon cancer.
No one did. It's like, well, not really. He had it for 4 years.
Jeez, man. I mean, I wonder, did they? Because there was a Black Panther 2. Did they? I don't remember if they did that or not.
Yeah, I don't even think they shot it yet. I mean, I don't know, but that's a blow to the film community and the Marvel universe.
Oh yeah, because he was
man.
He was doing he was in some other stuff too. That was
he played Thurgood Marshall in the movie Marshall. He's played a lot of he was actually like he's been around for a while, but he's really starting to gain his prominence, especially like after Black Panther, and then he played an attorney in another movie dealing with some civil rights issues. And
yeah, I think I saw it actually.
Yeah, so
it was really good. Jason. Yeah, no, I like Black Panther. The choreography was awesome. It was.
Yeah.
It really was. I mean, it's so sad too because we end up losing all these actors that have such a tremendous future. And in his case, it's like you said, he's been around for a while, but man, dude, he was just starting to blow up, to the point to where he could do pretty much anything he wanted. Wow. That sucks. That kind of
So,
puts things down.
and I also just got this news just coming in.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. Was Harrison Ford?
no,
No.
this is actually good news. So
All
I
right.
gave you the vegetables. Now it's time for the dessert. Man, there's a new report that claims that the trailer for Mandalorian 2 may have been held back to accommodate one of the new characters, with Ahsoka Tano being heavily rumored to be involved in the promo.
Yeah, that's what I
Uh,
just said like 15 minutes ago.
well, no, but they're saying like apparently Rosario Dawson recently shot some footage for the Mandalorian trailer, which is said to be exclusively for marketing purposes and won't reflect the plot of the show itself.
Ah,
The
okay.
report goes on to claim that we will see Ahsoka fighting off two bounty hunters in a familiar Star Wars location before she grabs herself a beverage, which could be the iconic Mos Eisley. That could be the iconic Mos Eisley cantina that briefly appears in the 5th episode of the first season.
Which would make sense because that's where Boba Fett, was. I think that was the 5th episode where we saw what we think is Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And let's face it. I mean, if Boba Fett's coming back, I mean, where is he? He's on Tatooine in the Sarlacc pit. So, I mean, are they going to show him escaping? Would he have escaped already? I mean, it's 5 years after. I mean, granted, if he was supposed to be in the Sarlacc for like 10,000 years, 5 years is not that long.
No, not at all.
But I mean, you got to wonder though, was he only in there for maybe like a few months or something? You know what I mean? It's like we got to figure out when is this guy coming out of the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah.
So that's
and it says, regardless, October is less than 5 weeks away. And fans are starting to get increasingly impatient about the fact that they haven't seen a single frame from the latest season of The Mandalorian yet. So the sooner Disney releases the first look to calm their nerves, the better. Yeah,
I agree. That's something that could be a big misstep on their part. They really better not play with The Mandalorian too much.
No.
They really need to show us something. I mean, a teaser trailer or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be even that big of a deal, but... And again, I mean, I have a feeling that the pandemic has a lot to do with why certain things are being done the way that they're being done anyway. So I'm willing to give them a little bit of a free pass on this.
Yeah. So at least, I tried to sweeten the pot up a little bit with some Mandalorian news.
Well, I'm thinking maybe you shouldn't check your computer until after the show before, I mean, man, that sucks, man.
Yeah, I mean, it literally just popped up and I'm like, whoa.
In a way, it's kind of morbid and sad, but I think we just did our first reaction video.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do more, but not celebrity deaths.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that would not be cool. Well, you know what? After sad news like that, I think it's time to move on to the next segment. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't need to drink anymore. I think I need to just go ahead and say it.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Clear your mind. All right, so this is a point in the show where we guys. Ooh, yeah, it's going to be one of those nights. All right, this is where we answer questions that you guys have submitted to us. Yes, that's true, even though, a lot of times the chat's going crazy in here. A lot of times, people just submit questions to us, and we've been doing this since the beginning, actually. So we usually do a couple of questions, so who do we got first, Daryl?
The first question comes from Haskell Warner, and his question is, would you rather be force choked or hit with force lightning?
Well, that's a question. Can I say neither? I don't know. I mean, because if you think about it, here are my choices. I could either have air slowly constricted to where I can't breathe, or I could be zapped with, who knows how many volts of electricity. Okay, I guess here's the thing. If if I'm being killed right away for either one, then I'm going to say Force Lightning. If it's like kind of a la Luke Skywalker at the end of Return of the Jedi, probably going with Force Choke. I don't know, though. That's
a hard one. I think
that's a hard one.
Being as someone who's, I know what it feels like to not be able to breathe, I'm going with Force Lightning. I'm just sorry.
But Jason says he would choose Force Choke.
Force Choke would probably be the quicker way to go.
That's what I'm thinking. Because, if you think about it just in the context of the films, I mean, Vader didn't really waste a whole lot of time. He would choke you. He would say, like, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, and then that would be it.
Well, I don't need that Vader. I need Rogue One Vader. I need him walking down the corridor, do this, move me out the way. Like, he was dead, like, instantly. Like, he just picked him up, choked him, and then he threw him against the wall, and he was out of there. Like, that's the Force Choke I need.
Exactly. The one that I would not want is the very first thing that we see, where he's like lifting the dude up by his, where he's just holding him up with one hand. Yeah, and then he like chokes and you hear the neck breaking. And everybody forgets about that one. Everybody always goes.
That was the most impressive one.
It was the most impressive, and it was the most brutal. And it's essentially the first thing that you're seeing. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, who's this guy?
Yeah, he walks in, looks around, and then the next thing you know, he's got some dude up by his throat. You're like, dangling.
Ronaldo's like, Force Choke. At least I won't get ugly like Palpatine. Which is kind of interesting because if you really think about it, when he was zapping Luke constantly, nothing really happened to the way he looked. See, my feeling is when he was doing the thing with Mace, he knew that if he was disfigured or deformed, it would actually benefit his cause. So he probably just, turned up the juice, so to speak. But again, that's why I wanted to quantify the conversation. You'll be dead like Antilles, though. That's what Jason said. Yeah. The thing is, what you have to look at is which version, and this is true even with Force Choking, it's like which version are you getting? And that's what we're talking about now. Because my decision would be based pretty much on, are we talking disfiguring Palpatine Force Lightning? Or are we talking about, it's going to be over quicker? Like, for instance, when Dooku basically incapacitated Obi-Wan, had he given him enough juice to kill him, that would have been fast. I could have handled that. Force choking, if you're going to do like you were saying that one dude in Rogue One, I'm good with that.
Just
come down the hall, choke me, throw me, do whatever. The point is that before I really have too much time to register it, I'm gone.
It's over. Yeah, it's over with.
We're talking that poor guy in the beginning of A New Hope. Yeah, I'm not really signing up for that.
Or even like Krennic or
Ozzel, dude. Ozzel was the one because Vader was going on and on and on.
Had a whole conversation.
Yeah, he's having a whole conversation, and Ozzel's just like looking like he just choked on a chicken. Exactly. Yeah, I'm sure Ozzel wasn't really paying attention to what he was saying at that point. And he was so confident too. Lord Vader, we just took the fleet out of light, and then boom. And when you get that feeling, you know what's going to happen at that point.
Yeah, it's like, oh man,
you're done.
Yep.
You're done. But I mean, so final answer would be, it would really depend on which version of which thing you're talking about. I mean, I hate to cheese out on this and say you got to be more specific, because usually we don't do that, and I always hate it when people do that. But I'm doing it this time. I'm pulling out. This is my one like little get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
This one you got to be more specific, because it's going to depend. But I think that we gave the proper scenario. Like, okay, I'd rather be force choked if it's like this guy, force lightning if it's like that guy. All right.
The next comes from Vino Turo. And his question is, do you think that the Kenobi series should be a limited run or should be longer?
Well, thank goodness we got the answer to that. We know it's going to be a limited run, but of course the question is, do we think it should be? I absolutely do think it should be.
Okay.
And
yeah, I feel the same way too.
I know you do. Because number one, you didn't even really want it in the first place.
True.
Number two, you even said, and I wholeheartedly agree, that it's like, okay, if they're going to do it, we don't need to see the continuing adventures of Obi-Wan where now he fights this pterodactyl-like creature. And, I mean, there's only so much that he can do and still not screw the canon up too much.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely stories that you can tell. And there's definitely a lot of things that you can fill in. But you have to be very, very careful about it. You can't. And it also depends on how close you get to episode 4. Like, if you stay a little bit back towards episode 3, okay, you might be able to do 2 or 3 seasons. And again, when we're talking about limited run, it's going to be a one season. It's a one and done thing. We know that. We know that they just released the information, I think, like 2 days ago. But here's the thing that I've always said is that it can't be more than 2 seasons. 2 like 10-episode seasons, because if you go beyond that, now you're going to be finding stuff for him to do just for the sake of running a show.
Exactly.
And I just don't think that that's good. And I know you're pretty much on board with that too.
Definitely. And I would just once again further dilute the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah, exactly. And again, there's like so many new stories that you can tell. Ronaldo says that I think it should be limited, but it depends on how successful it will be. Well, yeah, this is where we're going to see if Lucasfilm wants to remain artistic or not. Because they should keep it limited even if it is successful.
Exactly. Serve the story.
Right.
Or serve the character in this situation.
Exactly. Don't serve, the
greed.
the greed or the budget or whatever. Serve the story. But we'll see. I mean, this is actually the ultimate test for them. Who knows? I mean, I'm hoping they err on the side of caution and they really just say, look, you know what? Let's just keep it as this and move on. Because that does not mean that they can't have Ewan McGregor pop up on other stuff that takes place during that time period.
True.
Just means you can't do an Obi-Wan series. Well, we'll see. I mean, let us know what you think. We got a few minutes left in the chat. Or, as I always say, you can let us know in the comment section. By the way, if you guys want to, write to us at all or submit your own questions for our Clear Your Mind segment, just hit us up at Head to Head SW. So that's at Head to Head SW on Twitter, Facebook, or even Instagram. So Jason says, what would you think about a Dexter book? I have to admit, my mom actually watched Dexter quite a bit. Oh, are you talking about... Depends. You mean the serial killer Dexter, or do you mean, what was that dude's name in the diner? Dax?
Oh, it's about the Obi-Wan.
Yeah, that dude. Yeah, that dude.
Yeah, his name is Dex.
Well, if you're talking about that guy...
I don't think so.
I wouldn't think so either, but what would Dexter have to do with... But you know what?
Yeah, can you clarify that, Jason?
Clarify that one. Clarify that one for us. But if you're talking about the, it's Camino and Dexter from Star Wars. So it is who he's talking about.
Okay.
I thought so, but, you got to check these things because, like I said, you'd be surprised where these chats go sometimes. It's to the point where they'll get way off of Star Wars and I'm like, wait, we have to bring this back, but because we'll talk about whatever. But I think you know what? I never really thought about it. I'll be honest. I never thought about it, but I think it would actually be cool because if you watch that scene from Attack of the Clones, he pretty much led a really cool life. I mean, when he's talking about his adventures or something, or he knew that dart was Kaminoan, and he's talking about a system that even the Jedi didn't know was there. You got to think that this guy's been through some things. So I actually wouldn't mind having a book focused on him because, again, and Daryl, you and I have talked about this a million times, they need to start branching out. And by the way, when I say branching out, I don't even mean like brand new characters, although that would be great. But why not somebody... why does it always have to be the main characters? Why not take somebody like Dex?
Well, I don't think... I mean...
And for the rebuttal...
Don't get me wrong. You know what? Speaking of Dex, though, because when I saw him again. I thought in the Clone Wars, but remember like that one Jedi that was rogue. His name was Cruel,
Oh
but he
yeah,
looks just like Dex.
he
He's
does.
the same species. I thought they were the same guy.
That would be funny.
Yeah, but I was like, okay, well, of course you have different people of different, there's multiple people of different races, so or species for that matter. So,
Yeah, it's not like
but
he's the
yeah,
only one, you know.
exactly right. So I just think that somebody like Dex, I wouldn't. I mean, I could see him being like a side character more or less that's more prominent, but I wouldn't have him as a lead character though.
Not even in a book.
Nah, I don't think that would sell.
Oh, I don't think it would sell either. I'm just saying it would be cool.
I
mean, I think that you can.
I think
Okay, here. How about this? How about he's sort of the star, but you're seeing the story through his eyes.
like I would see him as like a Robin. Like put him with another character that has like okay, let's say he's helping out the Jedi or whatever. Like he's an informant, so he goes with different Jedi on different missions because they need his background to kind of help decipher some things or whatever.
Yeah, but how do you know he wouldn't be like totally cool? See, that's
No, but I think that would make him cool though. Just the fact that like okay, you would learn more, but like you wouldn't want a whole story just featured on him.
How do you know?
Just because I mean, it's
He
like
might be like this really supremely cool character though. That's the thing. He was only featured for like 3 minutes in the movie.
exactly, but that's not going to warrant. I don't think anybody's going to see that though. Or no one's going to pick up that book like, oh look, the diner guy. Let's go read this book. Like no,
It's like finally,
Right.
they.
It's just like
You
why
know,
don't we
after
get
all
the-
this time.
Why don't
No,
we get the background story of the guy who told Tarky, we analyzed the data, we found a weakness. Why don't we find out about that guy?
And
What
I've
was
been
his whole
saying
life
that.
like?
I've been saying that for years.
Like no one wants to see that. I mean, come on. Now, like I said, if you bring that guy in on something like, okay,
What I want to know is where's the Jawa TV series?
see,
They whet my appetite now again with the Mandalorian. They teased
I was glad
me.
he was popping those things, man. Like,
Dude, that
man,
was the
He was like in the
best.
shooting gallery at the carnival with those things, man. I was loving it.
And what was great was he was using the disintegration. He
Oh,
wasn't just
man,
shooting
yeah.
them.
Oh yeah. Now I understand why Vader said no disintegration. See, it makes a lot more sense now.
Well, the chat's active. What's everybody saying in there?
Jason says, Obi-Wan and Jedi Knight knew Dexter as a weapons expert. That fact alone opens up so many opportunities. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's what I'm saying. Like as an informant or as a guy who's like a resource, like I get it. Like okay, he goes on and helps him out discover. Like okay, I know this guy who knows a guy. I can get you in here. That type of situation. Like yeah, I could see him taking him on a mission or something like that. But like a whole book, Ronaldo says, I want to see a what if story about how a gun droid destroyed the Death Star.
It could happen.
Yeah.
They brought those things back in which movie was that? Was it Rogue One? Man, they brought those things back for something.
Yeah.
But this is just an example of how rich and wonderful of a universe George created. Because, again, commercially speaking, you're 100% correct. People are not going to pick up a book. They're going to be like, I don't even know who this guy is. The casual fan probably doesn't even remember the scene.
Exactly. Now, even, like, I could see them doing a movie on Phasma, even though but people didn't even buy that book. Just because it's like, for what? She's only on the screen for like a couple of minutes. She got shoved down a trash compactor, or she got beat up by Finn and fell down the hole, and like that was the end of her story. Like, what was she?
Well,
even there?
and that's a good point too, because actually, now I didn't read the book Phasma. It's one of the few books from that time period that I did not read. But yeah, man, that would be fantastic because.
Like, how did she get in the First Order? Like,
well, that's it. That's what that book covers.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
kind
that's
of,
what I mean.
kind of.
Yeah.
Actually, that book covers a lot on her childhood and her coming up and stuff like that. But it does get into that a little bit, and yeah, there's a lot of interesting story there. You could really go somewhat crazy with that, and I wish they would. And that's my point, is that really brings it to what I was trying to say, is the fact that, okay, you could either have these brand new characters, which would be great because we need that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to make movies or a series or whatever on a character that's from one of either the original trilogy, sequel, whatever, great. But how about on a lesser known character? Somebody who's still cool but isn't one of the big three or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, why not do it? I mean, it would make a lot of sense, I think, to focus on some of these, because even...
I would love to see like other Jedi stories, like Plo Koon, or like how did they get into the Order? What was their life like? Or
I'd love to see it, or Mace Windu.
Mace Windu, that would be now see that one.
Dude, that would
be all over that. Especially he wants to play Mace again anyway. That'd be perfect.
Sure, why not? And it's not like he looks that different. He could pull off a younger version of himself.
Yep, just shave
hey, look at what they did. Well, look what they did with Captain Marvel. They de-aged him.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to do. That's all I'm saying. But all right, yeah, like I said, if you guys are enjoying what you're seeing, you like this discussion or whatever, help support our channel. We even have a donation link in the description somewhere. And, like the video, subscribe to the channel, because we want to bring you guys more content. We'd actually like to bring you guys a lot more live content as well. So, by helping us, you're actually supporting the channel and helping us make more videos for you guys. But I think that's going to do it for us this week. Remember, next week again, we'll see you guys back here Friday night, and we will be back at 8 o'clock. Just way schedules worked out. We almost didn't have an episode. Remember last week I said we almost weren't going to have an episode. And in fact, we tried to pre-record one, but then we had all kinds of weird technical issues. And then I was going to record something for, like maybe 10 or 15 minutes or something, just to get something out there for you guys. I didn't have time to do it. And finally, I just told Daryl, I was like, you know what, man, let's just bring everybody a live episode this week and see what we can do. But, we should thank Ronaldo and Jason for joining us and, chatting with us tonight. Again, when you guys chat with us, that's really what I think makes this show. That really makes it a lot better. Not that I don't enjoy talking to Daryl, of course, but, it's like when you guys get into the conversation, that's great.
Yeah, it opens it up even more.
It opens it up even more. So I think with that, we're going to say goodnight to everybody. We hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always. Wakanda forever.
Yes. Yes.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.